Where/when were you born and raised?
I was born on September 29, 1928 in Sheboygan, Wisconsin at St. Nicholas Hospital.
What was life like before the Korean War?
Well, of course, I had my grade school, and after grade school, it's high school. Graduated from high school, and yeah, at that time I hoped to get into the Marine Corps, and I attempted to join, but I was only 17. This was in 1946. My father would not sign for me. You had to be 18, and so I could not go then. And I had to find a job, and I did. I went to work at the Kohler Company, and then at 18 I could enlist on my own, and I did. And I went into the Marine Corps, took my basic training at Parris Island, South Carolina. And after Parris Island, I went to Camp Lejeune, which is in North Carolina. And shortly after I got there, there was a group that was leaving for the Mediterranean because Palestine was being given back to the Jewish people, and to avoid or show some kind of interest in non-conflicting activity taking place, we went over to the Mediterranean, and just to make sure that nothing would go wrong, we spent 6-7 months in the Mediterranean. Then I came back from the Mediterranean, and now there was another group that was going over to Labrador to take cold weather training, and I went over to do that, and I happened to be in a tank company and part of a tank crew. And in Labrador, the terrain is mostly all tundra, and so the tanks would not operate because the tracks would sink down into the tundra, and then the bottom of the tank would hold them up, and so it was hard to move them about. So after Labrador, I came back to Camp Lejeune again, and at that time I thought, what's going to happen now? And there was nothing really going on. So I went out for the baseball team, and I made the baseball team, and I played baseball there until 1950, and that June, the Korean War started.
Were you ever in actual combat?
In the Korean War, yes. I went into Korea in September 15 of 1950, and at that time, the Marine Corps had the Incheon landing, and I always wanted to know what a landing would be like in the Marine Corps, because that's basically how I knew it. They were going on all the islands in the South Pacific during the Second World War. And yeah, we went in, made a combat landing on Incheon. Our goal was to go to their capital city, which was Seoul, Korea. And yeah, we got to Seoul, Korea, and continued on through. And then there's that parallel, I forget what the parallel line is now, but it's the line going in Korea, which was left after the Second World War. It was divided in two, and it was the 38th parallel that was North Korea, which was communist, and there was below the 38th parallel was South Korea, and that was capitalist under American control. And when the communists came down, of course, we came in and started pushing them back to North Korea, and got over that. And once we got over the 38th parallel, we were called back for a day of service to show General MacArthur coming in to cut the ribbons to cross into North Korea. And then we went up from that all the way up to the Yellow River, which is the river that divides China from North Korea. And once we got up into that area, there were 125,000 Chinese waiting on the other side, which was not news. We knew they were there. And of course, they came across, and we had 15,000 Marines that were sitting at Chosin Reservoir, and they went all around us and had us totally circled, and now we had a decision to make on how we're going to fight our way out of this. And so, yeah, we fought our way back to the Ham-Hung Harbor, where the Navy picked us up and brought us back down to South Korea, and then we started all over again.
Were you ever afraid in combat?
Yes. When you have 125,000 Chinese communists coming down at you and have you totally surrounded, and of course the temperatures at that time were anywhere from 20 to 40 below zero, and it was snowing pretty drastically, and we lost a lot of people. Out of that 15,000 that we had up there in the Marine Corps, I think there were 4,000 some that were killed. There were 5,000 some, 6,000 that were wounded, and that doesn't leave many that came out of there.
What was life like after the Korean War?
After the Korean War, I came back to Camp Lejeune, and I was asked if I would take a platoon of tanks down to the little island of Viegas, which the United States was using at that time for training landings, and the Navy was using it for bombings, and the ground troops, of which I was a part in tanks, we were using it to practice landings, and it was a training program for landing practices.
All right.